Break out the brooms. The St. Louis Cardinals sweep the Pittsburgh Pirates. They are back to 500, a season high, 5-game win streak. And all of a sudden, we're maybe feeling a little bit better about this club than we were a couple of weeks ago. Welcome back to Cardinal Territory. Katie, Woo, Bernie Miklasz back at you. Bernie, it's been a minute. How are you?
I'm doing well. It's been a really intriguing time to watch the Cardinals because there's been some new stuff. There's been some changes. Pardon me, my laptop's trying to speak to me for some reason. Yeah, I mean, we know that they're good at home, but I think they showed everybody something. Anyone skeptical about their ability to beat good teams, winning that doubleheader from the Mets was impressive. And I've gotten some stuff from fans like, well, anybody can beat the Pirates. Well, the Cardinals didn't beat the Pirates in Pittsburgh. So that's one of my pet peeves when media or fans, where they parse wins as if like some wins are illegitimate. Are you kidding me? Like, during the course of a season, man, bad teams can rise up and beat you, just like the White Sox beat the Cardinals last year in a series.
Oh, I remember.
Every victory counts the same. It doesn't matter who you're playing. So I thought it was, needless to say, a great homestand. And starting with that doubleheader sweep in Cincinnati, I mean, they've won 7 out of 9, and they're playing really good ball.
Yeah, I definitely think it's their best stretch of baseball by far this season. Things are going well. They're tied for the best record at home. But I agree with you, Bernie. That doubleheader against the Mets on Sunday really set the tone. And I know Pittsburgh has been scuffling, but to your point, you still have to beat them. And I thought the Cardinals had a very, very well-pitched series, whether you're looking at the rotation or the bullpen. I know we're going to get to the bullpen later in the show. Some timely hitting. Good to see Alec Burleson heating up. Good to see Wilson Contreras continue his hot streak. Some really good at-bats and all-around play from Victor Scott II. And if you missed it, we have an interview episode with him from Monday up on Cardinal Territory. He was really good. I think it's exciting to see some of the kids take steps forward. Victor Scott today alone scores from first twice, manufactures 2 runs on the base paths. He's robbing home runs from Juan Soto. He's confident. He's fun. I really like what we're seeing out of him, and we're almost 40 games into the season. It looks like Victor Scott II, you can checkmark him as a success story so far as runway, development, transition, pick your favorite Cardinals buzzword. He seems to have gotten this opportunity and run with it. No pun intended.
Right. And to me, the two in the runway season, the 2 guys that really fit the runway objective, right? I mean, I think sometimes we talk about some players that are actually, I don't know that they're runway players. I mean, Brendan Donovan and Lars Nootbaar have been in big leagues for a while.
Mm-hmm.
I think we got to be more selective about that. So with that said, Matthew Liberator on the pitching side and Victor Scott on the position player side. Liberator is one of the best starting pitchers in the majors so far. He really is. And I got a million stats to back that up, which I won't do. I did put it in my column at the sportshubstl.com if people want to go look. He's one of the best starting pitchers in the majors. And he's also averaging like 8.34 strikeouts per 9 innings. And Katie, here's a stat boy thing, but I think it's a good one because the Cardinals have not had a power lefty starting pitcher since Rick Ankiel had that one really good season in 2000. During the expansion era, which began in 1961, when we're talking about not guys going back and forth starting, bullpen, guys who are plugged in as full-time members of the rotation, there's only been 3 starting pitchers that have averaged 8+ strikeouts per 9 innings. Ankiel in 2000, Steve Carlton in 1969, and Liberator so far this year. He obviously has to sustain it. So he's doing something we have not seen this organization turn out hardly at all since during the expansion era, a power lefty. And I am just blown away by how great he is. And I'm going to ask you this. I mean, you were around a lot covering him. I mean, the poor guy, he's going back and forth, the bullpen, this and that. And, right-handed hitters are killing him, which they don't do this year.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just like you wonder. Yeah, I always felt sorry for the guy, always did. And what was his body language, his demeanor, like during all those tough years that led into this really terrific year? What was his body demeanor and all that stuff like?
I'm glad you asked that because it's night and day, not just performance on the field with Libby, but overall body language mindset from where he was in 2022, 2023 to where he is in 2025. Up on The Athletic soon. In the next few days, we'll have a profile on Libby and all the changes that he's made that's led him to this point over the last 4 years. And he reminded me that his legacy really was cemented his major league debut. He makes it in Pittsburgh and he's optioned to Memphis at 8 a.m. the next day. And so began the back and forth of Matthew Liberator. And that can be so hard for a 22, 23-year-old top prospect. He was a #1 draft pick. You're already carrying a ton of weight. To not have clarity in how you're going to be used, whether it's starter, reliever, AAA, major league, and to consistently be kind of just shoved around and called up out of need and your development as a pitcher not being prioritized, that can really take a toll on you. But credit to Libby, because eventually he just embraced that uncertainty. And if you want to know how difficult that is for young pitchers to do, the Cardinals didn't want to do it to any more of their young pitchers. They said, if we're going to do this anymore, it's going to be to a veteran who can handle it. So Steven Matz, step on up. But they saw what it was doing to Libby and to Zach Thompson and to Andre Palante to an extent. And they said, you know what? It stops here. And when you talk to Ollie Marmol or Dusty Blake or Julio Rangel, the other assistant pitching coach, you hear them talk about Liberator's conviction in himself, where he's no longer hesitant or unsure of where he belongs because he was given an opportunity. But when you say given, they'll push back and say, no, he earned that. He spent his offseason determined to come in and be a starter. He handled his spring training top notch. He forced his way into our conversation and made us say, okay, similar to what they did with Victor Scott. Victor Scott made them make a choice and reward him. Matthew Liberator did the exact same thing Victor Scott did from a rotation standpoint, and now we're seeing the results.
You know, Katie, you know, and by the way, cut me off if I'm jumping into something you want to talk about later. So, and I will not take it personally, obviously. But I was thinking about this today. You know, the Cardinals offense, even with, frankly, Jordan Walker and Nolan Gorman not doing too much, you know, they're still, I didn't check the rankings today, but they're, I know as of like Monday morning, they were basically a top 10, top 11, top 12 offense in the majors. I mean, they really scored well in every category. And yeah, when they're bad, they look really bad. But you know, if you look at the body of work, it's been a good offense, and that's without Gorman and Walker doing much. It's almost incredible to even contemplate what this offense would be if those two guys get going. And I don't know when or if they'll get going, but it's a pleasant thought.
I think so. Definitely. I liked what we saw from Jordan Walker today, that final at bat in the 8th, 2 insurance runs there. He needed something to go right. It's been a grind, and you hope you'll see that from Gorman too. And I'm glad you brought up Jordan Walker and Nolan Gorman, because as we transition to our next topic, which is runway, those will be the two guys we talk about. But we have just one ad read for you guys today. Just one. Let's hear. Did I upload it? Yes, I did. Somewhere.
Yes.
On it. You can tell it's the end of a homestand based on how little brain cells I have left right now. Let's hear from our friends at Arena Club.
FT fan by now, you know, if you're buying, selling, trading, collecting cards, Arena Club is the spot. We've been talking about them all season long, but I do want to focus on the slab pack experience, Kratz, since you've been ripping some slab packs digitally. And what happens?
I mean, as a kid, you wanted to rip open the packs. How can they do this digitally? Oh, baby. This is exciting. How the graphics come out and everything. And oh, yeah, the card that you pull, you can actually get that, John, physically. So it's perfect. It's all in one place, and it's a super exciting experience.
Yeah, they send that to you from the vault if you want it. But if you look at it and you're like, it's not the card for me, I want to sell it back, go for it. You can do any of that on Arena Club, and you can acquire the best value for your money with those slab packs, transparent checklists, and Arena Club's Slab Safe program. Right now, you can get 20% off your first slab pack or card purchase by going to arenaclub.com/FAL and use code FAL. arenaclub.com/FAL. Use code FAL.
All right, Bernie, I know you can see me backstage when the ad read is on. I would just like to clarify that I'm drinking a water, not a beer. The can does look like a beer, but I promise I am not drinking on the pod. It is a water.
Well, after we record this, you can have all the beer you want.
Well, I have a 10-day road trip coming up, so I need to stay strong. We'll see, though.
You can have all the beer you want after work on the road.
That may or may not tend to happen. Who's to say? So let's talk a little bit about runway, specifically with Nolan Gorman and Jordan Walker, because whether this is fair or not, whether they asked for it or not, they didn't. They are really the faces of this transition year. And that might be because of their pedigree as former top prospects or because of their inconsistencies from 22, 23 on. And the overall consensus from the organization, whereas it feels like even though they are so young, this is the year where the Cardinals figure out if Jordan Walker and Nolan Gorman are part of their long-term future. So the whole point of this season, again, everyone's favorite word, runway, was to give that to Gorman and to Walker. And if they had a slow April, like both of them did, they were going to be okay. They were going to continue to get playing time. They were going to continue to work through their things at the major league level. I think we're seeing Jordan Walker start to trend a little bit more in the right direction. His one hit today, I know, was very timely, very necessary for both him and the team. You'd like to see Gorman cut down on the strikeout rate, make more contact. My question is, and this is something I hope to have more clarity on very soon, is if you're the Cardinals and you're weighing runway versus results from both a team and a player standpoint, where do you draw the line? I personally don't think after 1 month, that's enough time. But especially if the Cardinals keep up their pace and stay around 500, where do you draw the line if you're the Cardinals?
It's a tough question to answer. I asked Ali Marmol that about 2 weeks ago on KMOX on the Gas House Gang. He's on every Tuesday. It's live from 12 to about 12:35. And I asked him about it. In effect, the short version of the question, Walker, Gorman, they're off to slow starts. Is the runway unlimited? And he first of all, he said, well, first of all, we're nowhere near thinking about this, but I thought he's been really candid. And I know when you guys have asked him about this, he's been really candid. He has said he has not couched it at all. When he thinks that they look, either one of them or both of them look defeated, where they are just mentally defeated and they're having a harder and harder time handling it. And they hear all the criticism, everybody talking about him. And after a while, it's the coping skills aren't great. Ali was saying, at some point you have to think about getting them in an environment that's not going to have as much pressure and let them regroup. So, you're asked this all the time. I know I'm asked this all the time. I don't think you and I can really even have a really good guesstimate. Maybe you can about when this runway would run out, at least, to give them a breather at Memphis. But I think they're on the clock. And when I say on the clock, I don't know. That's another thing. I don't know how many, I don't know how big the clock is as far as time, where they'll reset the clock. I don't know, but they're going to have to pick it up. Now, the one thing about Gorman I like, and it's not me, trying to be Mr. Nice Guy, looking for positives. When I was going over his stuff this morning, his chase rate is way down this year. I mean, he's really laying off a lot of bad pitches, and his walk rate's really good. Like, I think his plate
a lot more walks,
right? I think his plate discipline has really improved. Now, going into today, and I think he struck out a couple times, his strikeout rate is still a little too high. It was 27%, but it's not nearly as high as it was last year. So with Gorman, I always thought that, listen, if he can have that plate discipline and that strike zone judgment, the rest will fall into place. Now, and one of your colleagues at The Athletic wrote about this, although I swear, I was looking into this too. Ano Saris wrote about it.
Mm-hmm.
Gorman has lost a lot of bat speed from last year. So what's happening, and I looked this up, his pull rate, like, first of all, his fly ball rate is the highest of his career. That's good because that's power zone stuff, right? But his pull rate is really, really low, and his exit velocity is really, really down. So he's going to need to pull the ball to hit home runs. The bat's not quick enough for him to pull as much as he has to. And the exit velocity, to me, is a clear indication of the drop in bat speed. Can he increase the bat speed? I think he can, but I think it's worth pointing that out. The one thing that's really holding him back right now.
Yeah, I agree. And maybe this is a microcosm of the major swing overhaul that he's changed. When I thought Ollie had a good point over, I can't remember what day it was, but we were talking about if players like Walker or Gorman need to go back to what they were doing in 22 or 23 when they were having success. And Ollie said, I think that's the wrong way to look at it. I think if we try to encourage these guys to go back to what they were doing, they're not making any growth going forward. We need to find new ways to ensure that they can have more consistent success. And maybe that's part of some of the swing changes Gorman has made. I agree. It's a great point about the walks. When you have a power hitter, swing and miss is always going to be part of your game. So 27% for a power hitting guy, I think most clubs will take that as long as the power is coming through. And in Gorman's case, as you pointed out, that hasn't been there. So it's worth monitoring both of these trends. We know what to look for with Gorman. We know what we're looking for with Walker. I had a chance to catch up with John Mozeliak over the week. This story will also be out on The Athletic. In fact, I'm doing it right after this podcast. It was a really good conversation where he talked about the runway being important. And he said, look, we're still trying to win ball games, but the runway is important for these players. And then he said something that I thought was really interesting. He said, it's not infinite. So eventually, Jordan Walker and Nolan Gorman are going to have to post numbers in production, but the Cardinals do not feel like they're at that point right now where they need to make drastic changes. And I expect, my speculation is that will be that way through at least the month of May, maybe even into mid-June, because, caveat, when you play in the National League Central, if you are hovering around 500, you are in it. We talk about this a lot on the podcast. They're 3 games out, and they had a terrible April, and they're still very much in contention for the division. So I think the next 6 weeks for the Cardinals, and so much can happen in 6 weeks in a baseball season, so bear with me. But the next 6 weeks for St. Louis are going to be so indicative of showing where Jordan Walker is, where Nolan Gorman is, and where the Cardinals are, and that will all play into the decisions they make on the long-term future. Now, the easy solution here, they start to rake, problem solved. We're not talking about this anymore. But if this current trend continues over the next 2-3 weeks as the Cardinals approach June, then I think they'll maybe have to make a decision on that runway. So that's what I'm monitoring because, again, I think those two are by far the most fascinating names in this runway movement. So we'll see how the Cardinals go from there. But I did think it was interesting that Mo said the runway is not infinite. Cardinals fans, check out that story. I think it goes up Friday. But it was a really candid, honest conversation with Mo.
Looking forward to that very, very much. And I think you did a good job there of putting in a framework of the parameters as far as the timetable. And the only question I have, they have some versatility on the roster. I mean, Donovan can play in the outfield. Newt Bar can go to right. If Gorman went down, first of all, Burleson's getting more at bats now anyway. But if Gorman would go down, then does that mean Sajasi gets a chance to be the second baseman? So I'm wondering what the next step would be. And we obviously know one would go down, and then maybe later another one would go down. I'd be really surprised if they sent both of them down at the same time. But how would the dominoes fall in your view?
Yeah, that's a fair question. I think you would. One, I don't know what the Cardinals are going to do when Ivan Herrera comes up. I don't know if he'll be activated by Friday. That was their tentative. Maybe we'll see timeline, but I would expect at some point during this next road trip we see Ivan Herrera. I don't know if Pozo will stay or if Luken Baker goes down. You can make an argument for both. I'm actually a little bit inclined to believe my speculation that Pozo would stay, just because I'm not sure if you want to push Herrera as the everyday catcher coming back from a knee injury. We'll see. So that corresponding move will play into something. I don't know if we'll see Sajasi, but I do know we'll only see him if there's continuous room to play every day, right? That's the whole reason he went down in the first place. He wasn't going to get consistent playing time. You can do this where you have Donovan in left and you have Newt Bar in right and Scott stays in center, and then you need a second baseman, and that's how you could create your playing time for Sajasi. But that's only if you end up optioning Gorman, and the Cardinals don't want to do that. The Cardinals do not want to option Jordan Walker and Nolan Gorman. They want them to figure it out. That's why they're getting such an extended time to do so. So for storylines, I know we're always so caught up in what's the next move? What's the next transaction? The Cardinals cannot afford to be impatient. And after a week-long slump, just ship a guy out to Memphis. That's not the point of the season. And to their credit, they have been consistent about one thing and giving those players runway. And they highlighted Jordan Walker and Nolan Gorman as their top 2 priorities for this. So we'll see. Hopefully they figure it out, because it's a much more exciting and better Cardinals team, especially offensively, when those two are swinging it.
And, far be it for me to defend John Mozeliak, but
this is not the podcast, apparently.
I know he never said, well, we're going to commit to these guys and they're going to be up here all year no matter what.
No, he did not.
He
say
never
that.
said that. What he did say, and I think people like took that and, with his comments, they kind of thought he was implying that. No, I mean, the quotes were out there a lot where he basically says, what we would like to do is give them, 500 plate appearances, 550 plate appearances, and give them that full opportunity. But there was never a guarantee or even it strongly implied that they would be up here all year, no matter how bad they're hitting.
No, never. And the one thing that was consistent was him insisting that the Cardinals are trying to win. And you can roll your eyes at that, but they are trying to win with the roster that they have. And if you think that the Cardinals can maybe keep up this pace and stay right around 500 again, then maybe they could compete. They're trying to win, which is why they didn't trade half their players. Well, half their players they couldn't, but it's why they have Eric Fedde on the roster still. It's why Steven Matz is still here. It's why Brian Helsley is still here, because yes, they are trying to develop players, but they're also still trying to play competitive baseball. And that has been the message Mo has said since day one. So speaking of Brian Helsley, by the way, perfect segue, because Bernie, it is only right after we spent multiple episodes talking about the bullpen, maybe complaining about the bullpen, a therapy session about the bullpen every now and then. The bullpen had a really good week. So in this 5-game stretch, just 2 earned runs over 17 and 2/3 relief innings, 8 scoreless relief innings from the bullpen throughout the Pittsburgh series. And we have some usage changes here. You're going to see Steven Matz and Gordon Graceffo in short stints in relief for now, for the immediate future. And you can read about this on The Athletic. A lot of shameless plugs from us today. Get used to it. We've been working very hard. That's right, Bernie. And here's why. So we know why the Cardinals did their 6-man-ish rotation. And we know about the importance of preserving depth and making sure that you're giving your starters the best chance to stay healthy. Well, the Cardinals from today, May 7th, through the end of the month, have every Thursday off, so they can keep all 5 of their regular starters on a 6-day schedule without having to insert the hybrid role. That belongs to Steven Matz. So for at least the next 3 weeks, maybe 4, you will see Steven Matz used similar in a role that Matthew Liberator was used last year. I asked Ollie if that was a fair comparison to make, and he said that's exactly the way he's looking at it. You'll see Steven Matz in either a high leverage lefty lane or multi-innings where he can go ahead and, see maybe 1 to 2, potentially 3 if they need it, innings in relief. Gordon Graceffo, same thing from the right side. So what a great week to be Gordon Graceffo. Yeah. First career win in Cincinnati, 5 innings of relief, comes in on Monday, a scoreless inning to bridge the Cardinals to their big guys at the end, and then picks up his first career save on Tuesday. You'll see Gordon Graceffo in short stints, maybe not the length as Matz, but they really want to see what he can do as kind of the secondary tier. And when you figure out and think about why the Cardinals are doing this, Bernie, we know they've had a very hard time bridging to their setup men. They have a right-handed or 3 right-handers that they really like: Kyle Leahy, Phil Maton, Ryan Helsley. They trust them a lot. The problem is they haven't been able to get to them a lot. We know that Ryan Fernandez did not have the season start that he wanted. Jojo Romero has looked better, but still working on that circle of trust. So if you're the Cardinals, you're looking at how to best get there. They think by putting Gordon Graceffo in and Steven Matz in, you'll have a better chance to bridge to your big 3 in the back end of the ballgame. And that's what we saw in the Pittsburgh series.
Yeah, a couple of things. Ollie Marmol told us on Tuesday that Dusty Blake found a mechanical flaw in Romero's delivery, and they were mystified why his velo was so down. And Dusty Blake, recommended a change. They had a bullpen, and apparently his velo went up. So maybe there's a really good chance, or just a chance, that he'll be better from this point forward. And then the other thing, and if you don't mind me, throwing a couple numbers out there, and they're simple numbers. I'm not getting into esoteria here. No one's blaming Ryan Fernandez for all the bullpen issues they had, but let's be honest here. I mean, obviously it was a huge deal because they thought he was going to be the 8th inning guy, and they didn't want to give up on that opportunity too soon, but it just became hopeless and he had to go regroup. Okay. Here's what I want to tell you. And I looked at this. I did this late this afternoon. Pardon me. With Fernandez in the bullpen, and I only use him because his demotion represented a turning point. That's all. He wasn't the only problem. Before he went down to Memphis, the bullpen had a 5.11 ERA, their relievers combined to lose 8 games. They had 6 blown saves and only 5 saves. Okay. Those are gruesome numbers all across the board. Okay. Since he was demoted, and then the first game they played after that was April the 25th. Since that point, including today, the Cardinals bullpen's got a 2.66 ERA. Their relievers have 4 wins, 4 saves, and only 1 blown save. And by the way, the inherited runners percentage of scoring, it went from 50% when Fernandez was part of the bullpen, and now it's down to about 30% since this big change, the changes were starting to come in the bullpen. Now, to me, those are just really stark numbers that just tell you the story, like the before and the after picture. This bullpen has been outstanding since about April the 25th. Could they strike out more guys? Sure. But what you're talking about there, they're cultivating new sources. They're giving more opportunities to different guys. They're also moving up a guy like Kyle Leahy into more high leverage spots. They've shown they'll do that with Graceffo. So this bullpen remix since April 25th is working very, very well. I don't think it's a fluke either, because with the success, they're also getting Ryan Helsley into more games for save opportunities. And before that, it was a huge problem because he was sitting around for save opportunities that never came. And his sharpness was really impacted in a negative way by that. Okay, there you go. There's my presentation, Katie.
That was spot on though, Bernie, because I think it really puts into perspective like just how good this bullpen has been. And we naturally fixate on it when it's bad because it loses games. But it's been slowly but surely much more effective. And talking to Dusty Blake today, he said, yeah, as a group, our velo is coming up. We're being more effective in the strike zone. And we have made some changes in role usage. And here's why bridging to those guys, like you mentioned, or that we mentioned, is so important. So the Cardinals played 27 games in April, right? 17 of those 27 games were decided by 3 runs or fewer. 12 of those 17 games, losses. And where were those losses being really taking place? In the late innings, the 7th and 8th, because the Cardinals could not find a way to really bridge to Ryan Helsley. So you think about 2024, I'll throw some numbers at you. The Cardinals went 31-25 in 1-run games in 2024, and they also had one of the most effective bullpens in baseball. The reason that they were able to play or be relatively successful in those 1-run games is because of their bullpen. You had Helsley in the 9th, led baseball with 49 saves. You had 2 setup men, Jojo Romero from the left side, Andrew Kittredge from the right side, that were lights out. And when they couldn't go or they were having an off night, your secondary pieces in Ryan Fernandez and Matthew Liberator, you felt comfortable slotting them in, especially in the second half of the season. Well, the Cardinals are hoping that with Leahy and Maton, because Leahy, they're all 3 right-handers when you compare them with Helsley. Leahy's not overly splitty at all, though, so he can easily take a lefty lane, and he has before. If you have those 3, the Cardinals are hoping that Steven Matz and Gordon Graceffo can be those secondary pieces, similar to how Fernandez and Liberator were used in 2024. And when a very small sample size, I know, but both Matz has looked good all year, and Graceffo stuff has really looked good in short bursts. You're feeling so much better about your bullpen. You have one of the best closers in baseball. You have to get there to use him. And that's what Ollie said is the most important thing. Bridging to the back end of your relievers is the most important thing in these ball games. And I think the Cardinals have a good plan for the next few weeks as to how to get there. And,
the other thing that's just so glaring, and I'm telling you something you already know, but they started off the season, like their first 5 1-run games they lost. Since then, they've had 5 1-run games and they've won them all. Well, why? What's the number one reason? The dramatic change in the quality of the bullpen and that bridge to Ryan Helsley. There's no doubt in my mind that's what it is. Oh, there's other factors. Your offense has to score or do this, but a lot of them were just low-scoring games, and it was a battle of the bullpen type situation, and they have prevailed in 5 straight of those 1-run games, and they've beaten some good teams in the process. So the bullpen was like just about everything last year that had to do with their success. Just about everything. The predominant factor. It was the predominant factor in why they were just squandering so many leads in so many games and not winning tie games this year. It was the predominant factor. Now, during this upturn, once again, it's the predominant factor, except it's positive the way it was in 2024, except instead of being negative as it was earlier this season.
Yep,
Bullpen.
I completely agree. And
Bullpens.
it's fascinating to see just how quickly things changed, because around 2 weeks ago, I think you and I were very much out on the bullpen, and we were very much questioning the Cardinals hovering, 3 or 4 games under 500 for most of April. All of a sudden, new life for the St. Louis Ball Club. Now, quickly, before we wrap up here, they have a big test, not to be the certified vibe killer, but the Cardinals are 4-13 on the road. We know this. They have 9 straight on the road, starting on Friday, 3 in DC, 3 in Philly, off day, and 3 in Kansas City. Bernie, one thing, what needs to go right for the Cardinals to turn their road woes around?
I think they have the bullpen in place to do it. Okay, so that's already changed since they started changing the roles and changing personnel. But the other thing, and I don't have the numbers in front of me. Now, I know the Cardinals bombed away in that doubleheader sweep at Cincinnati, but the Cardinals offense has been really, really mediocre on the road. And it doesn't make sense to me. I mean, Busch Stadium's not exactly, the great American ballpark. I mean, it favors pitchers, yet the Cardinals have performed very well at home, even though the place is half empty most of the time. But on the road, it's just a huge difference. And so one thing people ask me, well, why are they so bad on the road? Or it's like, what do they have to do to turn it around? Or you just asked that, but I phrased that wrong, and I apologize. It's that, well, they'll win more games on the road if they can score more runs on the road and hit for more power on the road. I mean, and I'm maybe simplifying it, but listen, the starting pitching's in good shape. Perfect. No. Mm-hmm. Is it in good shape? Yeah. The bullpen's in much better shape. So of all the factors that led to their poor performance on the road to this point, okay, and and keep in mind what were they before that doubleheader? 2-12 on the road? I think so.
Before the Cincinnati, yes, they won 2 games at the end of Cincinnati, 2 road games.
So the offense in those 14 road games where they lost 12, the offense was just awful. It's just like, I don't get this. Why are they hitting so bad on the road and they're really good at home? Eternal mystery.
I'm with you. Hopefully the return of Ivan Herrera, whenever that is, again, not guaranteed he'll be back for the National Series, but the Cardinals will keep their fingers crossed that he is. Hopefully that will help. We saw a better day from Lars Nootbaar. He's been going through it, but he did a nice job of keeping his composure, at least working walks when, the results offensively weren't there. Alec Burleson continues to swing a hot bat. We will see. Yeah, Bernie, this was a fun homestand. I had a lot of laughs, and I think Cardinals fans enjoyed 5-1 in 6 games, 5 straight. 500 ball. We're in a good spot right now.
7 out of 9. And a closing thought for me, just put a little point on our Victor Scott conversation. Someone who's been in St. Louis since the mid 80s and covered Whitey Herzog and all that. And I'm 100% familiar with the splendor of Whitey ball and the speed and the defense and the base running and everything else. I mean, it was a wonderfully entertaining and successful style of ball. But we in St. Louis tend to kind of live in the past and just want to say, well, Mike Matheny would drive me crazy at spring training every year, because the media would ask, because again, everyone's like hanging on to this notion that you can still play Whitey ball. And I would just sit there and go like this, when the questions were being asked. And Matheny would say, oh yeah, big fan of Whitey Herzog baseball, and we can do that. We're going to try to do that. And it's like, Mike, you don't have the personnel to do that. What are you talking about? But let me say this about Victor Scott. One message I've gotten over the last few days, whether it be on social media or friends or whatever, it's like, you know what? We all go overboard about Whitey ball because they're never going to be able to do that again. Okay. But Victor Scott could have played and started and been a good player and an ideal match for the Whitey Herzog style of baseball. That's probably the best compliment you can give him. I really mean that.
I completely agree. When I watch him play, I think he's the perfect blend of old school and new school Cardinal, because he does all of that Whitey ball stuff, like you say, but he has a little bit of flash, a little bit of personality, a little bit of swagger. And I just think that's really fun to watch. I think if you took a poll of Cardinals fans, at least half would say Victor Scott II right now is, if not their favorite player, their favorite one to watch. And rightfully so. He's been great. So hopefully Victor carries on those good vibes. Hopefully the Cardinals carry on those good vibes. This podcast is a lot more fun when the Cardinals are winning. I will say that. More stuff for you coming up at the end of the week. I'll be on all 3 cities on that road trip. I haven't done a 3-city road trip in a while, but I love DC. I've never been to Philly, and Kansas City's easy. We're right across the state. So plenty of fun content coming from you, or coming for you, from The Athletic, from Cardinal Territory, from Bernie. You know where to find us. We will talk to you soon. Thanks as always for watching.
Bye-bye.